The tension was already in the air when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Ivanka Trump took their seats for a live panel discussion on women in politics. Halfway through, Ivanka's repeated interruptions would push Jasmine into delivering a remark so cutting, so unsparingly direct that the studio froze. Since that night, the clip hasn't stopped circulating online. It was one of those moments where the heaviness of the room is palpable before anyone even says a word. Bright lights flooded the stage. Cameras were locked in position, and millions were watching across the country. This was billed as a balanced conversation about women's roles in modern politics, but for those who knew the friction between Jasmine Crockett and Ivanka Trump, it was obvious this would never be a polite back and forth. The set was arranged in a semicircle of white modern chairs against a rich blue backdrop. The moderator, veteran journalist Renee Falco, sat in the middle, surrounded by guests from across the political spectrum. Jasmine, wearing a sharp emerald blazer that caught every flicker of the light, occupied one end. Ivanka, in an ivory sheath dress, sat on the opposite side. They didn't shake hands or even nod at each other, a quiet signal of the ground they were standing on. Renee began with a gentle question about how women in positions of power could bridge the political divide. It was the kind of safe opener that usually invites vague platitudes. But Jasmine leaned forward slightly and, in her unvarnished style, spoke with the clarity of someone who had no interest in playing safe. "I've spent my career," she began, "knowing that as a black woman in politics, the bar is never just competence. It's perfection. Even then, people will look for an excuse to discredit you. That's the reality for millions of women without the privilege of a safety net." Heads in the audience nodded. She wasn't even halfway through her thought before Ivanka shifted in her seat and cut in. "I think it's important we keep this productive," Ivanka said in that steady, careful tone she had mastered. "When the tone becomes too combative, it risks shutting people out rather than bringing them in." The air thickened. Jasmine paused, lips pressing together for a split second. There was an unspoken judgment tucked into Ivanka's phrasing. Renee tried to guide things forward, but Jasmine raised one finger ever so slightly, a silent indication she wasn't done. "I'm talking about survival," Jasmine replied evenly but with an edge now. "And survival doesn't always sound polished. It sounds like life." A faint ripple of murmurs ran through the audience. The cameras caught Jasmine's steady gaze and Ivanka's unbothered composure. Later, when the discussion turned to economic struggles for working women, Jasmine spoke of rural Texans holding 2 or 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. She painted pictures of grocery store parking lot conversations, church steps, and town hall meetings. "These women," she said, "aren't going to retreats or hiring PR teams. They're choosing between rent and medicine, between gas in the car and food on the table. And they're still told to be pleasant about it." Ivanka crossed her legs and interjected again. "That's where we need to focus on opportunity rather than grievances. People respond to solutions when they feel respected, and respect begins with the way we communicate." It was another interruption, subtle but enough to break Jasmine's rhythm. The weight in the air pressed down. Jasmine turned to Ivanka directly this time. "Respect," Jasmine repeated slowly. "Respect is earned, not handed to you because of who your father is." The room reacted audibly. A few claps escaped despite the moderator's attempts to maintain order. Renee moved the conversation along, but the tension didn't dissipate. Cameras lingered on the 2 women, splitting the screen so viewers could study every flicker of expression. Jasmine's face was alive with conviction. Ivanka's was refined composure with an undercurrent of steel. When Renee later asked about bipartisan cooperation, Jasmine didn't hedge. "You can't talk about cooperation," she said, "when half the room won't even acknowledge the lived reality of the other half. That's not cooperation, that's denial." The applause this time was scattered but pointed. Ivanka's eyes flicked toward the audience before returning to Jasmine. "I don't think anyone here is denying reality," she said smoothly. "But there's a difference between raising awareness and alienating potential allies. Sometimes your tone," she paused, "doesn't invite collaboration." Some in the audience straightened in their seats. Jasmine didn't snap back. She let the pause stretch. "You know what's funny?" she said finally. "I've been hearing that same critique my whole life, from teachers, bosses, people who could have made things easier but chose not to. And it's never about tone, it's about control. The murmurs returned. Renee pivoted to Ivanka, who kept her tone warm. Leadership means listening. And listening is easier when people feel they can speak without being attacked. Jasmine didn't blink. Truth can feel like an attack when you're not ready to hear it. That's not my problem to fix. My job is to represent the people who sent me here. And their reality doesn't get softer just because it makes someone uncomfortable. The applause came again, stronger. Even as the moderator tried to steer to economic policy, the undercurrent between them stayed taut. Jasmine spoke of wage gaps, healthcare costs, and structural barriers. Real people's struggles, not statistics. The last thing they need, she concluded, is someone telling them their tone isn't nice enough. That drew louder claps. Ivanka tried to bring it back to unity. We can agree everyone deserves opportunity, she said. Opportunity comes from building, not tearing down. Jasmine cut in before she could finish. You're talking about dialogue like it's a performance. For me, it's survival, and survival isn't elevated. It's fought for. The pause after was electric. Renee smiled uneasily, trying to move on. But what came next would seal the moment in people's memories. When asked about generational differences in leadership, Ivanka answered first. The key trait is composure. Young women should see leaders handle disagreement with grace. Strength doesn't have to be loud. It's about knowing your worth without shouting it. It was polished and pointed. Jasmine's eyes stayed locked on her. You want to talk about grace? Jasmine began, her voice low and deliberate. Grace is telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Grace is showing up for people who can't repay you. Grace is not confusing silence with strength. She leaned forward. I don't raise my voice because I like the sound of it. I raise it because for years, no one listened when I whispered. And when I finally spoke up, I was told to be more polite, more palatable, so others could stay comfortable in their ignorance. The applause swelled. Ivanka's faint smirk suggested she thought Jasmine was proving her point. Then Jasmine's voice cooled, sharpened. Shut your mouth until you've lived what I've lived. The words hit like a dropped weight. Silence, then gasp, startled laughter, and finally a wall of applause, raw and sustained. Ivanka blinked once before fixing her practiced smile back in place. Renee fumbled for the next question, but the audience was still charged. Jasmine's face stayed calm, unwavering. I'm not here to be a token example of civility, she added once the noise ebbed. I'm here to represent people told to wait their turn, lower their voices, and smile while struggling. My job isn't to make you comfortable, it's to make change. That earned another burst of clapping, even from a panelist beside Ivanka before he caught himself. Ivanka replied with a measured, We can agree we both care deeply about women in leadership. Care is a verb, Jasmine answered. It's not about saying the right thing on camera. It's about doing the hard thing when no one's watching. The audience rumbled again as Renee cut to a commercial break. Backstage, the buzz was immediate. Phones lit up. Hashtags formed, Usher Jasmine Crockett, Usher Shut Your Mouth. Clips were already uploading to TikTok. A makeup artist told Jasmine, You might want to freshen up, you're about to be everywhere. In the green room, Renee entered and admitted, That was one of the most electric things I've seen in that studio.